Hi guys, thanks very much for checking out another episode of Kettlebell Sport Talk. This episode, I had the massive privilege and honour to have a lifter that I've admired for such a long time. She's just continues to set new boundaries, not just in her training and in her competition results, but actually what her athletes show on the platform. And for me as a coach, that's something that's speaks volumes. Somebody who can really get the most out of somebody who can perform at a really high level, and it speaks volumes the fact that she's got such a massive team that's just spread all across the world. So we really dig into her training processes, what sort of tipping points she's found in competition, how she's learned to handle the competition nerves, and how she's learned how to get into a bit of a flow state. We chat through coaching online clients and how sometimes collecting data for collecting data's sake isn't always the best thing. And also, we just really just had a good chat about the ins and outs of sports and her training process, and the journey she's sort of gone on as a lifter. So this week and this episode, I was joined by Abigail Johnston. It was probably one of the most popular guests people were asking for in kettlebell community. When I put that out there, who would people like to speak to, Abby come up top of the list. And when I asked what type of questions like she wanted answering, and yeah, there was loads of people commenting and stuff like that. So hopefully you get a lot from it, guys. What I will say is we had a bit of disruption with the internet, so there is some points where it goes a little bit slow motion, a bit robotic, but just stick with it. Okay, it's still, you get all of the information. It's still a fantastic episode. So I'll take full responsibility for that, because obviously I didn't manage that properly, but you can still get loads from it. So just stick with it, guys. I know you'll get a lot from it. I know you'll enjoy it. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Any comments, guys, just drop them in the links below. Remember, always subscribe to us on YouTube so you don't miss one of these episodes. Subscribe to us on Spotify as well, so if you listen to the podcast version of this. So yeah, dig in, guys. Hope you enjoy. Get a notepad and a bit of paper. Enjoy it, and we'll speak soon. Sure. Hi guys, thanks very much for checking out another episode of Kettlebell Sport Talk. I am joined by an absolute legend of a lifter today. She's also a great coach. She's probably somebody who's revered around the world. I'm not putting too much pressure on her because she'll hate me for saying it, but we've got the fantastic Abigail Johnston on today. So somebody who's just constantly making us question if she's actually human or not, with all of the amazing achievements she's doing in the sport, from 200 snatches with a 24 to then doing about 5 marathons in a day, and then competing in every single lift in a world championship she can. She's just greedy. That's what she is, guys. She's just greedy. But yeah, Abby, thanks very much for taking the time. I know you're super busy with all of your clients and your coaching and training, so thanks for joining us. How's life in sunny Glasgow?
Not so sunny today, but yeah, a bit cold. But
Good stuff. So, like I say, much appreciated for joining us. So the main thing was, where did you get started? What sort of got you into kettlebell lifting in the first place?
It was a bit of a kind of backdoor in, I guess. Originally I started in martial arts, so I was training martial arts for a few years, and got to the point where I was testing for my black belt and that, and we were competing. And at the time, my instructor brought in kettlebells as a training tool, as our conditioning tool, strength and conditioning almost. And he'd been away and done an online cert, and then came back and thought they were great. And every time he brought them out of class, I hated them. I could have walked out of class, really hated them. And then we found out that about the Willenhall comp that Mark Stroud ran. I think it was 2012. Found out that there was this competition, and to that point we didn't even realise you could compete in them. And generally looked up videos on YouTube to see what to do in a competition, and kind of copied. We found a lot of videos from Ice Chamber, Valley and Fedorenko, people like that, kind of copied what they were doing and turned up at this competition, and had our eyes open to a whole new world, basically. So yeah, nice. That's how it all started.
So and what was it that sort of attracted you to thinking, oh, actually I can compete on it? what got you hooked on wanting to try and better yourself and try and just continue with lifting kettlebells in the competition style?
I would say rather than the competitions themselves, it was probably more the training. Like, I'm not. Some people really feed off competitions and like excel at them. I feel like I enjoy training more than I enjoy competing. I really do.
Yeah, nice.
So, yeah, arts, which in the competitions can be, it's scored quite subjectively almost. So like you're doing your forms, you're doing your techniques, and we had sparring as well, which was less subjective, I guess. But you're marked more on the style and the fluidity of the movement. And going to kettlebells, it's a lot more quantifiable. Like you had these set goals that you could achieve, and I think at the time I really liked that as a contrast to what I had been doing.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of sport. Like you never complete kettlebells. You know, there's always something. As soon as you achieve one goal, it's like a path to another goal. There's another weight, there's another rep, there's another lift, there's something else you can do with it. I really like that. And also I think it fed into the before I started martial arts, even while I was doing it, I was quite a clumsy person. Like I wasn't naturally skilled. Went to a dance class when I was young and basically lasted one class. And I don't know if they threw me out or I didn't go, but I wasn't more body awareness. And I think that continued into kettlebells because it is very much about body awareness, about how you're moving with the bell, what your body's doing, the mechanics of it all. And that side really appealed to me as well.
Yeah. Nice. And obviously from there, it's just kind of snowballed and you've gone on to... That's it, and that I think that's what's fantastic about the bells and stuff, just that progression. But obviously, you've achieved some fantastic stuff in the sport in terms of results and personal bests and stuff. And obviously, recently, finally broken that 200 barrier in competition and stuff like that. But out of all of the achievements, what's been the one that's kind of really meant the most to you and kind of stood out for you the most?
That's a really hard question because, like I say, I don't know if it's me personally or if it's just a general thing in the sport. But yeah, the 200 thing was massive. It was almost. I think I probably get more satisfaction out of doing that in training than I did in competition because there was almost a 2-year gap there. Because, like I say, I'm not a natural competitor. I get very nervous in competitions, and I've almost got more nervous as time goes on, and I've had to work on that more as time goes on.
Yeah.
So almost became a bit of a mind block, like a frustration for me to get it in competitions. So yeah, it was satisfying to do it, but it also was, I don't know, it wasn't like a big celebration, you know, it wasn't like a huge thing. And I feel that way a lot with kettlebells is, I don't know, like it's great to achieve something in competition, but I couldn't single out one achievement because it's not like you achieve it and then you're done, and you know it's nice to tick it off, but there's always something else there.
Yeah.
And I think also as well when things build up to that level where it becomes like a thing you want to do and you've worked for it for a long time, like a lot of people maybe getting their master of sport or something. Something people don't talk about a lot is almost like the anticlimax afterwards. Yeah, it's really great to competition, but once you've got that goal, it kind of pulls away a part of your goals. And after the initial kind of euphoria and elation, there always becomes almost like a wee dip afterwards where you're kind of a little bit lost or don't know what you're doing, or a little bit like you need to find a new path or a new goal. I think it happens to a lot of people after competition, that kind of post-competition kind of dip, I would say. Before you get your fire back. And I'd say to goals as well. Like, the initial, I've done it is great, but then now I know that's always tempered by, oh no, I know what's coming now after like a couple of days is going to be a little bit of, the balance of the...
Cool. So on that, what would be your advice to guys? And I've fallen into this trap many a time, sort of like putting a number on a pedestal or 10 minutes and stuff. What's been your way of sort of managing that? Because it's something I still struggle with all the time. It's like this number, but it's slowly realizing, well, if I hit that number,
Yeah.
Doesn't really make it much of a difference.
Is your life going to change? No, it's not. I know. And then when you've hit that number, it's that number plus one. There's always, there's always something there. I know. I think that's the same as well. A lot of people have that in their head with numbers or with the weight as well. They're like, right, I want to get up to, amateur weight. I want to get up to 24s, 16s, or then I want to get up to the 32s or 24s. I don't know. For me personally, I think it's trying to take away the focus on the numbers and the weights, and just trying to focus more on the movement and the reps, and the numbers come. So even in your set, the hardest thing is if you're 2-3 minutes into your set and you think, oh no, I've got another 50 reps to go, I've got another like 7-8 minutes to go. It feels insurmountable, but again, trying to refocus in on what you're actually doing, on the movement, trying to make each movement perfect, although it's never going to be perfect, but trying to work with the belt, knocking off those reps one by one, the seconds one by one. It's a much better way of thinking. And in training too, I think those numbers, is it not a better feeling to walk out the training session and think, yeah, I achieved something there, even if I dug myself into a hole and it was horrible, I managed to get myself out of it, I managed to learn something. I much prefer walking away with that feeling of, like, today I learned this, next time when I go in I can use that, and then the numbers will tend to come. But if it's that empty hollow feeling of, yeah, I did 20 reps, but what did you learn? Like, where are you going to take that?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point, and I think completely agree. I think you get into kettlebells and you enjoy practicing the movements and learning new stuff, but then as soon as we sort of get a little bit better or we start setting bigger goals, we kind of forget about the full why we do it in the first place, don't we? We're kind of like, well, I want to get fitter, I want to feel like I'm getting better, but then all of a sudden we forget about the good stuff and we just focus on one thing, and it's kind of like, well, focus on that stuff and you get more enjoyment out of it, isn't it?
Definitely, I think so.
Nice. So obviously leading into that, obviously you've spent a lot of time practicing the perfect technique and breaking it down, and obviously your background as an engineer, you're really looking at the biomechanics and really trying to break down the movements. What's kind of been the biggest steering on your training over the recent years? Is it kind of being focused on the biomechanics, or I know you do a lot with HRV and trying these different things? What's been the biggest thing that you've said, no, actually this has had the biggest impact on me? Is it been breaking down the technique and sort of the biomechanics side of things?
In terms of results, I would say, like, even when I'm coaching, it's, to me, your basic building blocks, your technique, it's always going back to technique. You're always trying to do something more efficiently and better. The HRV does come into it as well in terms of more in terms of your training program over time. I use it a lot with my guys, and I also use training by heart rate as well. I use that myself, so instant feedback while I'm training, monitor heart rate. Because it's more a case of none of us are paid athletes right now. We're not full time. We have to work our jobs. We have to go home. Some people have families, who have stresses in their lives, and when we're trying to jump into competitive training, recovery becomes a big issue for a lot of people. And also, as you say, a lot of people get into the sport to stay healthy, and when you go to the competitive side, sometimes that skill can tip over the other side. It's not always healthy to train to a competitive level. Harder isn't always keeping you healthy, making you stronger. Sometimes it's actually breaking you down. And it's trying to use the HRV and the heart rate training with people to bring that skill back in the middle so that they can recover from what they're doing, but also alter their training in regards to the other stresses in their life, because we want our people to be able to still go out to work the next day. If you drive for a living, you don't want to come into training and wake up and you can't lift your arms. It's got to be a case of our training has to fit around the rest of our life. So it has been help. And more for me as well. As I said, more for the long term programming. So I'm looking at trends in HRV. I'm looking at variations, the coefficient of variation over time, rather than using it as a traffic light system about what I'm doing that day.
Nice. And obviously you're looking for like the longer term trends and stuff. What do you have something in place if the guys are kind of like, that day flagging up as being, I don't know, really tired, or there's a big adverse spike or change in that sympathetic to the para, do you sort of say actually just is your training program in a way that you can change that quite frequently, or is it kind of like, right, okay?
Yeah, it depends on the person as well. I mean, some people, again, we've got to look at how it fits into people's lives. Some people have set days they can train. So say, for example, if someone can only train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that's the only days they've got, if they're 12 weeks, 16 weeks out of a competition and they wake up and they say to me they feel terrible and they've got their HRVs in the red and they're just, you know, they've got no energy, then yeah, sure, like put those training days off. But if you're maybe 2 weeks out of comp and you've got that one day to do it, and you know, you don't have the freedom to sometimes maybe put that to the next day or the next day. Occasionally, sometimes you have to just get it done. But generally, yeah, I would say it's the more flexibility, the better. Obviously, if someone can put it off, if they're not in a state and having it recovery, then that's great. Yeah. But also, if you're managing the trends, hopefully it's going to be more like that. Maybe they're coming down with something, or maybe they had a stressful day at work, or they drove to the gym and got road rage. You know, all these sort of things as well. It's yeah, I'm hoping to not push someone to the level of they're going to break on training. So that's why I'm trying to manage it. Yeah. But in terms of that as well, sometimes like the sometimes you've just got to get it done is, I mean, we say stress is a bad thing, but sometimes, I mean, to get a training effect, to get better, we have to create stress in the body. Yeah. So sometimes those red days or those amber days in HRV, it's actually maybe something we're wanting. If we're trying to peak someone, if we're at a point where we're pushing them hard in the program, it's expected. And as long as it's an expected change and we're coping with it, then yeah. But I'd say flexibility in the training program, going back to your question, is if it's possible and it fits into someone's life. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. I mean, it's really interesting. It's something that we sort of monitor trends, and we look at counter movement, jumps, and just trying to monitor that training log, because as you know, like, training isn't here and life isn't there and food isn't here. It's all intertwined. Yeah, exactly, and they all have a knock-on effect and stuff. So yeah, I mean, looking at that, and I mean, what I try and do is with the rep ranges even on the development day, so even like the hard days that they've got to try and push, it's giving them that flexibility and saying, well, actually, if things are showing down, if you are in a bit more of a sympathetic state and it's shifting down, just try and drop a percentage off your RPE or something. But if it goes way down, then we'll say, right, you need to drop the weight, and then we'll drop the intensity down and stuff as well. But yeah, I think it's something that, like you say, for us people who, we're not paid athletes, we're not full-time athletes, we've got so many different things. It's definitely a go-to tool, and because it's fairly inexpensive, it has massive benefits. It's something that I really recommend to a lot of my guys, and anybody I sort of speak to and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I would say as well, it's got huge benefits. I use it as a tool both in training and coaching, but also it's you don't want to use it as a crutch, I think. So all the technology, all the heart rate monitoring, like, you still want to feel what it feels like for your heart rate to be high, and you to be able to look at that heart rate on the screen and then use it, because it's developing the kind of self-regulation and the trying to feeling what it feels like yourself. Don't be a slave to the technology, really. So you don't want to wake up in the morning and use your HRV to tell you what to do that day, and then when you start training, you don't want to let your heart rate tell you what to do. You want to be able to adjust based on how your body feels as well. Going back to that original body awareness thing, it's some days you start training, your heart rate spikes really high, so maybe you have to take note of that if it's unexpected. But sometimes we are having to learn how to work at that high heart rate, how to regulate our breathing, try and bring it down, but feel internally how it feels a lot.
Yeah, because I've seen you rock up to competitions, and it's kind of like HRV scores being like ridiculous when you're being ill and traveling. And I think it was British Championships, wasn't it? You knew you were coming down with a cold, and but that's competition. Sometimes you just have to get it done and stuff. And
and sometimes it's just it's just taking that into account and bearing the goals. So I dropped my pace down on the jerk in the British because I knew if I started at the pace I'd planned, I would have bottled out at like 4 minutes. I would have probably been, oh, this is hard. I mean, your HRV score is basically, it's looking at your fight or flight response. It's looking at your parasympathetic and sympathetic response. So people panic when they see a red day on a comp day. Remember, I mean, it's comp day. You're in fight or flight. You're nervous. You've got adrenaline. I would expect a red day then. I would expect that sort of reading. If you're, in the green, chilled, relaxed, I'm like, oof, maybe there's something there that's you have to look at. Yeah,
definitely. So, say to the guys that priming session before a comp is massively important, because like I said, if you are in a parasympathetic state, then chances are you're probably not going to perform to your optimal, because the body's kind of in that relaxed rest and digest kind of state, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's learned for each person. Some people need to be hyped up before a comp, need to get themselves, they need to then get their system into a bit more of a sympathetic base to get the adrenaline running. Whereas for me, I'm the opposite. I'm very nervous, so I have to do the calming activities before competition. So there's no hard and fast rules. It's reacting to each person, and but also, as I say, not using it as a traffic light system. A red day on comp day doesn't mean you're going to mess up. It just means that you're in a competition state, But the app doesn't know that, so it thinks that you're, in a bad state. But
I think sometimes that's where the coaching always comes into it, and I think this is the importance of getting a coach, because you need somebody just to be that sounding board, because I've done it many a time, and kind of like paralysis by analysis, kind of, this and then that, and then, or you have one bad rep on technique and it was like, it was the worst thing in the world and my world's going to end and stuff like that. And sometimes you just need, and as a coach, you need to have that confidence or that ability to speak to your athlete and just say, listen, this is fine. This is normal, and that buy-in, and it's really important, But so obviously at the moment you've got a really big team online. Like obviously I know you've got guys from different countries and stuff, as well as back home New York club. How do you go about managing all of those guys? Because I know you do a lot of traveling. You always seem to be in the Swiss Alps and stuff like that. But how do you sort of manage all of these online students and stuff? What's kind of your process to make sure that they're getting the most out of your program and you're giving the most to those guys?
I would say almost the same way I manage my face-to-face people. It's getting to know them personally, what they need. Some people need a lot of input. Some people prefer like a step back. Some people need daily help. Some people need just that weekly check-in. It's getting to know them. Obviously with the people you train face-to-face at the gym, it's a little bit easier because generally, I don't know, you must be the same as me. If someone walks in, you can tell if they've had a bad day. You can tell if they need push. You can tell if they maybe need a step back that day. So that's a bit more instant. Whereas your online people, there is that lag of sometimes if they're not so chatty with you, sometimes you don't know if they've had a bad day until after they've done their training, and you look at their feedback and like, oh, what happened there, But to me, the feedback is vital. It's telling me. I like them to note down exactly how it felt when they were training, like what they felt, where they felt it, how the reps, what they were focusing on, what they were working on, all this sort of stuff. The more feedback, the better because of that distance. I mean, nothing beats a bit of face-to-face work on technique, obviously, but feedback definitely helps.
No, like you say, it's always a tricky one, because I think sometimes with online, as a coach, I mean, I might just be speaking for myself, but actually sometimes you find you spend more time focusing on the online guys because you kind of worrying a little bit. It's like, are they getting this? Are they getting that? Should I be looking at this? Should I be looking at that? And that's sometimes for me is a big challenge and a big struggle, because I'm probably worrying too much.
Oh yeah, it's definitely time consuming, and yeah, as you say, it's even watching videos, getting back to people, trying to work with them on videos, that sort of thing, to work on technique. And I think it's not just the technique, it's not just the training. With a lot of people, it's trying to figure them out at a distance is harder, because you're trying to figure out their personality, how much support they need, if they're someone who needs more support coming up to a comp, or if they need left alone, if they need a bit of mindset, help, if they need, it's all the sort of trying to find all the triggers and the bricks, and the bricks to make their their training and their program work properly for them. So it's the numbers are almost secondary, I would say, to all of that. Justin, for example, if you look at a lot of the training systems, a lot of them will say you never test until comp day, you never do your 10 minutes till comp day. I know for a fact a lot of people feel they need a bit of they need to know they can do something before doing it. For some people, they need to do it. They might feel that for me, I feel I have to achieve 110% of what I want in comp and training, because I know the nerves are going to knock it down a little bit. Other people like that. Whereas some people are happy not doing a 10-minute set and just peaking on comp day. And it's varying the numbers to suit the personality, rather than trying to make that person fit your numbers, I think.
Yeah. There's a saying that I really bought into, which was given to by my mentor. It's kind of like, you've got to make the program fit the athlete, not the athlete fit the program. And I think that's what I really experienced early on in my lifting career. Is I was trying to make myself fit a system, but it didn't fit me. But I was trying to I was like the square peg trying to fit into the round hole, and wondering, oh, well, why can't I do it? I must be rubbish. I must be doing this. I must be doing that. And it was just it just didn't suit my style. It just didn't suit my personality and my everything, all of these things that come into effect. And and I think in the beginning, I don't know about yourself, but when you first get a new online client, it's kind of like every day, every other day, how's this, how's that, how's this, how's that, what's this, what's that. It's almost like when I sent Nevaeh to school for the first day, how was this okay, and stuff like that, because you're trying to get as much information in the early days, and then you find a couple months into it, or a couple cycles, it's kind of like they just rattle through it,
Yeah, because you've then learned what works for them, I guess. More like at first you're probably more generic with your programming, because you have to try and feel them out and see what fits them, and then, as you're saying, as you get the feedback, that's adjusting. And that sort of experience as well, I think, makes us better coaches, realizing that we have to let go of our preconceptions when we bring on a new client.
Yeah.
That they're going to be like every other one. They're not going to just, maybe if they don't hit that number that day, it doesn't mean that, either our program's wrong or they're wrong. It's just that we have to be working together. No,
it's a fascinating subject, and because of sport, we're not kind of blessed that we've got kettlebells on every single street corner gym and kettlebell coaches in every gym. Not yet, anyway. That's what we're working on, aren't we? But I think obviously online's a big system, and I think but I think the more people get educated on it and have an understanding of actually this is what the coach needs, because it's a two.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not like, right, I'll write your sets and you just do them. It's kind of, no, you need to tell me, how do you feel? How's that? And don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me what I need to know, kind of things. It's like, how's your sets? Fantastic. When really they're going, terrible. I've had that many times.
Exactly. And that's the thing, you can tell as well, I think. Some people fill their feedback out after a session, and then you get much more detailed feedback. And some people leave it to the end of the week. And I really don't like that, because I can't remember an hour after my session. Like, my mind's blocked out that pain, it's blocked out, I felt it in my left foot cramping, or this sort of thing. How can you remember that over however many sessions and then put it in at the end of the week? To me, I really like it when people either with a training diary, maybe write down afterwards and then fill it out when they can, or go straight into their sheet and fill it out after, because you just want that almost like that kind of outspill of just what happened, even the little things. matter what they were thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you say, and that's when you're the more, like you say, you're most aware of absolutely everything and stuff. And I think, say to the guys, like, right, get your RPE down. And what I found is, because I make them do their RPE straight away, it makes them question, well, why was it an 8? Oh, it was an 8 because of this, 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 and this, and this. And then all of a sudden they're like, it just triggers them getting into it, you know? And it just...
One of the girls I coach actually has her own system that she's developed. So she coaches as well. So she has set titles in her feedback. So she puts down maybe, right, what could I have done myself, write down every day after training, which is great for me. Talking about training, fitting into people's lives, sometimes people can't do that sort of detail, but for her it really works to get that down. It makes her think about it. And it makes her learn that lesson. Like I was saying before, you want to walk out of your training thinking, what did I learn there? Even if it's something that you can do better next time, or even if it's like, oh, this is why that part, okay, right, next time, or that rep felt really good because the connection was there. Okay, right, how did I do that? And then trying to do that on 2 reps next time instead of the 1. So it's a good way for people to not just give me feedback, but feed into their own learning process and become almost self-coaching a little bit. Yeah,
well, because I think that's really important. And I think one thing that I found, and that's the difference between the adults and the juniors in the beginning, is kind of juniors are a bit more structured, but that process of learning, well, what did you learn today? What was the most challenging? In every single session I have with the juniors, it's kind of like, what's your biggest takeaway from today? Although they're in a bit more of a structured do this approach, just because they seem to be a bit more chaotic. It might just be the kids in my gym, but they're a bit more, they need a bit more structure, whereas the adults have got more of an agile type programming. They've got more stress, but that reflective process is, what did you learn today? What's the biggest takeaway? What's this? What's that? And it has massive implications further down the line, and has massive benefits, you know.
Definitely. It's making them take responsibility for their own learning and coaching as well, a little bit. Because I think some people think they hire a coach and the onus is on you to make them better.
Yeah.
So if they're having to self-reflect and think it is making them be responsible for themselves and their lifting a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I say to people, like, listen, your coach is a sat nav. It's kind of like, we'll give you the best plan possible depending on where your goal is, but you've still got to drive the car. Like, I'm not a chauffeur, you know what I mean? You've still got to do the work, and you've still got to give me that feedback. I'm not going to tell you what gear to drive, what speed and stuff like that. I'm going to guide you as much as I can, but there's still got to be that point where, listen, this is your journey, this is your story. I'm just giving you the roadmap in a Yoda type way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So on that, obviously you've got a real mixture of female and male clients, and this was one of the questions that a few people in Kettlebell community asked, is what's the biggest difference you've got, obviously apart from technique changes for male and females, just because body structures and stuff, but again, what's the biggest differences that you found compared to training men and women, apart from obviously the obvious?
I would say it's more different styles for different individuals. Obviously, I think the male-female thing comes further down the line of, I'm coaching someone in regards to their technique, their ability, their skill levels that they have, their ability to recover, to handle load, all this sort of stuff. And then the thought of whether they're male or female comes further down the line. And there is a little bit in the long-term programming. With women, obviously, we've got to take into account the hormonal cycle. And for some people individually, that's massive. For other people, it's maybe not. So some people, I really do have to take that into account and structure their training around it a little bit more. And other people, like other people train like men. You know, it's just that it doesn't affect them that much in their day-to-day. So it's not that I'm coaching a woman or a man, it's I'm coaching that person and how much it affects them. But yeah, definitely, like the hormonal cycle for women can be massive in the training.
And so obviously it goes back to the needs of the individual and stuff like that as well. And
Yeah.
How do you go about finding? Do you try and, is there any sort of questions that you try and ask the athlete in terms of females as well as like, listen, like the hormonal cycle, do you find that there's, how do you react to that? Or do you just sort of say, right, let's see how the training process and how the HRV trends, and then we'll tackle it as we come? Or
a little bit. So it depends on the level of the athlete as well, because if you've got someone who's maybe at the start of their kettlebell sport journey, then the training, they're going to improve with the training anyway, aren't they? We're going to, you know, what we do, we're going to deal with their load, we're going to deal with the recovery, deal with the reps of volume, all this, and they're going to improve. And at that level, the hormonal effects, it'll come into it a little bit, but it's not really going to massively knock a lot of reps off or knock the performance off. Once an athlete's getting to kind of intermediate to advanced level, it'll have more effect on their day-to-day strength, on their ability to handle their endurance, their heart rate, diet even sometimes. So once they get to that level, it tends to be, I do regulate in that way, have told me, oh, at this time I just feel like I can't lift, or I feel I'm uncoordinated, or, you know, today my RPE was 9 when it should have been 5, you know, this sort of thing. And we start to figure it out, and at that point there we have either the discussion, or I say to them to start noting down on their spreadsheet, on the training spreadsheet a little bit. They can just note down what day in the cycle they're in, and then we can start taking that into account. Or if we know, like, people are regular, then I know roughly there how I'm structuring training anyway for them.
No, it's
not a conversation I would have right off the bat with someone who's you know, starting out on 8s, 12s, even 16s. Maybe I would,
No, and I think that it just sort of highlights the importance, like, you're coaching the individual, doesn't matter regardless of that, and as a coach, you have to be aware of it. But because I think I've made in the past of kind of like given the too much data and too much stuff to say, right, I need this, need this, need this, need this, and it's gone like a rabbit in the headlights. And they just need training. They just need training in the beginning.
And there's no point collecting data that we're not using. There's no point having all this, like, you've got your HRV, you've got your RP, you've got your heart rate, I've got your day in the cycle, I've got everything. But, you know, it's, as you say, it's overwhelming. And if I'm not going to use that in the actual process of planning their training, then why am I collecting it? So, and why am I making them go to the effort of giving me it? You know, so it's, at the start, as you say, people just need to train. They need to train, they need to learn to track their training, they need to learn to be aware of what their body is doing, how they're feeling, their feedback. And then as they progress, the progress of increase, like your nutrition, like your cycle, like day-to-day stress, like your HRV is going to have a lot more effect then, I'd say. So getting down the layers, it gets higher up,
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of, it's almost in the beginning, it's kind of like, again, another saying that I picked up early doors was kind of like, listen, the wider the base, the higher the peak. It's kind of like, just build a real strong, solid base, and that's done for your training and the different modalities, and then we'll start stripping everything away as we progress up that, isn't it? You know. Nice. So, obviously, again, we had quite a few different questions and stuff. But obviously, one thing I wanted to chat to you about was, because we've spoken in the past. I think the first chat we had was Hamburg. I think when we chatted about competition nerves and how much of an effect that has and stuff like that. Obviously, recently you still smash that, and you're saying you thrive off training more than competition, but still seeing you really, I'd say from the outside looking in, probably the past 18 months that I've watched you compete, it just seems to be a different switch almost. Is that kind of like a process that you've learned, or is it just a confidence that's come from just keep going? What's kind of changed in that competition process for you, or is it too difficult to put your finger on?
There's a lot of stuff. It's definitely not been a switch of, at first I think you think the more you compete the better it'll get, but that might be the case for some people. It depends why you're getting the nerves. for me, the more I compete, the more pressure I feel, and a lot of the pressure is from myself.
Yeah.
And it's admitting that as well. Like, you think all this pressure is coming from other people, but it's really not. Like,
Yeah.
then if I drop a bell in the first minute, I'll be devastated. Then like, people might come up and go, oh, but the next day they'll forget about it. It's me that's going to keep on that, like, that fear of dropping the bell now. So it's first accepting that most of it comes from myself. I had a few really bad comps. And bad as in the nerves really affected me and physically affected me, as in the blood supply to my hands without that I switch hands or I can't hold on to the bell. After a few bad comps, I really realised it was something I had to work on properly. Initially, I actually contacted a sports psychologist, but to be honest, I didn't find it that helpful. I don't know if it was a personality thing with the person I was working with, or if it's a hard sport to understand for people who aren't involved in it, I think, and it's unlike any other sport. So trying to explain that and then explain how I don't know, I didn't find it helped me. So what did help me, I started listening to a lot of podcasts. Basically every time I went for a run, I would put on a podcast, and not your general motivation ones, but more ones that were, I don't know, dealing with the mental processes of training and competition. I did also start focusing on trying to create a pre-training routine as well. So I was using Headspace app, and I was listening to that a lot at night time, and also before I trained. I tried to make a habit of just having the Headspace app on while I was warming up, or having a podcast on while I was warming up, or even sometimes it was even having a set playlist on while I was warming up, just so I could ensure that in competition I was taking myself away from the crowds before I was lifting. So I was trying not to, the nervous energy that goes around at competition, and you know yourself, sometimes it can just be infectious. You know, everyone else is nervous, they're coming up to you saying, are you nervous, or you're going to do great, and you feel all this pressure building up again. So I would try and take myself away, listen to that podcast, listen to that playlist, and just try and, in that way, it was almost linking up to how I was before training. So mentally, I would find it really calming. Using a bit of visualization, out with training, trying to visualize the competition and visualize how I felt during the competition, but obviously trying to visualize it in a good way. So feeling like I was confident. So you're just trying to retrain that. I guess for me, I feel it's a trigger. Like, as soon as I go into the competition, something triggers, even though I don't want it to. I'm in that fight or flight mode. Like, my body thinks there's danger, and I know there's not danger. It's created. So it's trying to retrain that, which is quite a long process because you're dealing with quite a primitive part of the brain.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it is, and I think that
I wouldn't say I'm there yet.
It's an ongoing process, and I think because it's one routine, and you'll have to try different things. I remember Gregor saying visualization just didn't work for him at all.
Yeah.
But for me, it has helped in terms of just, right, how am I going to approach it? And then for me, going onto a platform now is I'm not even thinking about the lift as such. I'm just thinking about family and all of these things, just different. And again, everybody's completely individual, but sometimes I'd go into a competition and think, right, okay, I'm going to focus on just doing this, and then I'd have the worst competition ever. I was like, well, that never worked. So then you go back to the drawing board, and then it's an ongoing process, and you're just trying to find what works for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I find as well, especially with snatch, for me, I love training. So I love training kettlebells because of that process of trying to figure out what you're learning and how you're getting into it. But with snatch especially, everything slows down. You feel like you can, like, almost like time slowing down, and you feel like you can control everything, really, like the slightest difference between reps, and it just feels great. And I actually did a lot of reading on flow state, and it's something, if you can hit it in competition, you know, if your awareness is a lot more internal than external in competition, and you can hit that state and not let yourself be pulled out of it by people shouting, by the counter, by the judge, then everything goes a lot better. So a lot of work I was doing, I guess, was just learning about that and realizing in competition the triggers that would try and pull you out of it, and then getting away from them.
Yeah, there's a great book, The Rise of Superman. That's a brilliant book about the flow stuff. Really, really good stuff. But when I was listening to that, I'm like, these guys are flying between massive buildings in like downtown New York in a squirrel suit. I'm putting a weight above my head for 10 minutes. It's not that bad, really.
No, I know. So yeah, but it's almost reframing in competition what I was aiming for, though, because at first I was aiming for that rep target. We were talking about focusing on that 200, like I know I can do it, and then getting frustrated and then getting annoyed. So it was reframing that into, well, the good sets I've had in training where I've managed to hit those numbers or above is where I'm in that state. So why shouldn't I target that state in competition rather than numbers? So, and it's where the enjoyment is as well. You know, that's what I enjoy, is having a set where I feel like I've worked with the bell, I've worked with my body. So the goal in competition for me now is to try and enjoy the set. It sounds really basic, but it's to try and get into that state where everything works and enjoy the set. It's not to try and hit one more rep. I mean, obviously that comes with it. It's part of the goal, but it's not the main aim now for me. And as I say, it's an ongoing process. I still have pressures. I still get really nervous before comp. It's not like I've fixed myself. I still get comps where I do 2 minutes on my right hand in a switch because I think I can't do any more, even though I know I can. But I feel almost like I'm a lot more adult about it now. Like I've accepted it, and I've accepted that, oh well, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah. It rings true to so many things. I read a lot of Stoicism and stuff now, and that comes back to like just focus on what you can control. And I think the thing is, and I try and say it to my guys, because in the competition, you can't control what bells are going to be there. You can't walk into a hall and go, it's a little bit too hot, so can we just turn the temperature down? You're not going to rock up to a thermostat and take it down. And you can't go, oh, I like to lift on this type of platform and face that way, so I'm going to adjust the full competition layout to suit me. But you can. The only thing you can control really is your thoughts and how you react to it. And that flow state. And some days the result will go your way, some days it won't. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't, like, it's not the end of the world. As long as you enjoy that process and you learn from it, that's the main thing, you know.
Exactly.
Cool. So, going on to that, one of the questions one of the guys had was looking at that competition and the lead up to it, dropping weight. Is it something that you have to do much? I know I've seen you sort of drop it, thinking about dropping a couple of kilos in the past, or competitions had to drop weight and stuff. Is it something that you're actually in control of pretty much all year round? Do you sort of say, actually, I'll stay at this weight? Or do you sort of think, right, now I'm going to give myself a couple of kilos and then I'll try and shift that for competition? How do you sort of go about that? How do you approach kind of like the drop in weight for the comp? And if you do it, how do you do it?
Well, generally, I like to, for the people I coach as well, I like to say that you want to be competing roughly where you're training, because it depends on the percentage of weight you're trying to drop. If you're trying to drop, for someone my body weight, 5-6 kilos, it's going to completely change how I move. It's going to change how the bells sit and rack. It's going to change a lot of things. So if you're going to do that in competition, why? What's the aim? And you're going to feel tired. You're going to feel like your energy's not going to be there, because if you've tried to drop it quick before competition. For me, I started at the 63 kilogram category when I first started lifting. Again, I was training a lot, training competitively in 2 sports at the start, you know, the martial arts as well. And naturally, I was sitting naturally at 63, 64, so I just competed at that. Over time, as I've trained with heavier bells, I've went up to the 68 category generally. And again, at first I was still sitting around 65, 66. That's crept up a little bit over time. Been working with double 24s. Obviously I've built a little bit of strength. now, as I get to competition, so I compete sometimes in 68 category, but some of the competitions I compete in is 65. So I'm naturally I sit around 67, 68 if I'm looking after myself, not at Christmas. But so coming up, if I know I've got a competition where I have to be in 65, then generally I'll try and drop down to it a little bit before, but we're talking like 2-3 kilos over the case of 6-7 weeks. Usually I'll only try and drop down to maybe just above it, say half a kilo above it, and then do the last bit with water weight, because I find if I'm dropping with water weight, I'm not losing energy on the day, because you've still actually got that muscle mass there. And then you're just rehydrating. But I don't like trying to hit weights when you've got to think as well, why are you trying to hit that weight category? So like, is there a reason to, like, we're talking people starting out, just compete where you're at, please. When you're starting out, compete where you're strong. Don't add the stress of trying to make a weight on the day. As you get more competitive and as you're at higher level, yeah, you might have to pick a little bit what category you're going to be in, because you're thinking a little bit more about you can't control who else is in your category on the day. You can only control yourself. So if you're picking a category that someone else is in and you think, oh, I can pick that because I want gold and then that's the best category, there might be 20 other people all of a sudden entering that category this year that you never knew about, who are all better or all doing more numbers, and you don't know, and you've made this weight cut and made yourself weak. And it's you can't control the reps that someone else does, and you can't control the points up to comps. So why are you trying to hit that category, and how much is it going to take for you to hit it?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I play, because I generally walk around. Well, I used to walk around about 82, 83, but I was carrying extra timber, but kind of I used it as an excuse not to eat healthy, because it was kind of like, oh, well, I'm in the 85 category, so I can eat sweet and all that kind of stuff. So, but I was like, well, no, actually, if I just cut out all of that, I walk around at 80 kilos, which for me is like, well, it's 2 kilos away from 78, which actually is a more beneficial weight for me.
But also, you probably found that you changed your eating habits more for performance as well. So you were 80 plus because you weren't eating healthy. That's a different matter. If we're looking at performance and training well and competing well, then you want to be eating well. Like, you want to have a nutritious diet. So and what you set at a nutritious diet is slightly lower for you. So that makes sense.
Yeah, defo, and I think, like I say, I think people just take that into consideration. I think if you are in a position where you're not eating well, just get that sorted, and then find out where you sit. Don't use it and then don't try and change too much. Just find out what your natural healthy performance weight is, and then adjust for that. No, it's really interesting. One of the other questions that came in, I think it was from one of the marathon guys anyway. He was talking about what was the most difficult one for yourself. Was it 10 minutes with the 224s or 30 minutes with the 216s for long cycle? For me, I looked at that and I was like, surely it's got to be the 24s. But what was kind of the thought? What was kind of the most difficult for you?
Yeah, for me, 24s. Like, for me, I'm not a strong person, so I've got to laugh when everyone comments in my videos saying, "Oh, you're so strong." They should see me trying to press the weight. Seriously, like, the maximum weight I can strict press is 12, which is why I haven't entered this online challenge this month. So, like, upper body wise, I'm really not strong. So lifting 224s takes a lot, and it also takes me building a bit of strength. And every rep on 24s feels like a 1 rep max. That's how it feels to me. Like, it feels like me doing a 1 rep max deadlift or squat. So I know I have to be so focused in on technique for that every rep. And if 1 rep's off, like, it could be the case of me dropping the bells, it could be my sets over with 1 rep that's slightly off balance, or it could just be the rep that puts my heart rate up by 15 beats a minute, and I then have to drop my pace by, or finish the set early. 16s, double 16s now, because of the amount of training, like my training age on them, I would say. So I'm fairly new to 24s. My training age on double 16s, and because I've been training 24s, they're almost, I feel like they're like an aerobic weight for me now. Like, so it's pace work. So I've done 2 sets of 30 minutes on the 16s, double 16s. The first set was in training, and it sounds bad when I say it, but it felt like a jog. It felt like going for a little like 5K jog, nice pace. It felt like I could have kept going. The second set I did in competition it felt horrific. It did. It was a warm day, it was competition, different bells, all the sort of stuff, the usual excuses we make for ourselves, but it was just something about it. I felt sick. It was so hot that day in the hall, and I wanted to put the bells down like at 7 minutes, knowing you've got, you know, so much more to do. So it was a horrible set, and it was mentally a very hard set to get through. But physically and mentally, the 24s, I would say, were harder. Yeah, nice. For 10 minutes. But given training time, I believe everyone improves. So I feel that in time, as long as I keep training in 24s, I'll be more comfortable, and maybe that balance will shift. But right now, yeah.
No, it's a really interesting one, and I think because there's a lot more people doing marathons now, and there's always that kind of, well, what's harder, heavier for less time or lighter for longer times and stuff. But I think
it's very
different. Yeah. It's so different. It's kind of saying, well, what's harder, a 5K track race or the 100-meter sprint?
Yeah, you're comparing apples and oranges. It's two different sports almost. Well, it is. I mean, kettlebells, every weight is like a different sport, let alone lift. But the marathon lifting is very different, takes a different mentality, but it's almost like to me, it's an extension of what I'm doing with the kettlebell sport.
Yeah. Cool. So, and on that then, obviously, I don't want to take up too much time, so I've only got like 2 more questions for you, Abby, and I'll let you go. But obviously, there's been the emergence of a lot more popularity in marathon lifting, and then the grassroots is doing some great stuff in England, lots of 5 minutes, and then there's pentathlon. What do you kind of see the future for the sport, or what do you feel it needs to on? There's a complex subject.
That's isn't it?
But it's a question I always ask, because
I don't know. It's a really hard question. The sport, I mean, I've been doing the sport since 2012, so what's that? Nearly 7 years now. So, well, was that over 7 years actually? And there's been a lot of changes in that time. A lot of new people coming in, a lot of people leaving. But also, as you say, like the emergence of like more popularity in the marathon, the grassroots has come, which is a great thing, getting people into the sport. And there's been a lot of changes on the international level, which has been really hard, because it's almost like we have to react to all these changes happening at the top level, and especially for women, I think. I mean, you know that men's lifts over time have stayed the same the whole time that I've been in the sport. Every year, the lifts that women can do or are supposed to do has changed. So when I first started out, snatch was the thing. Like, obviously domestically, we had all the lifts. We had biathlon for women, we had long cycle. But internationally, snatch was the thing. So it was almost like you were only validated if you were a female snatching. Whereas now that's almost switched a little bit, and it seems to be a lot of focus on double long cycle. Seems to be the big focus for women right now. Not a lot of people talking about double biathlon. Snatch is taking a bit of a back seat. All these changes, but it's I don't know, it's very hard to see where it'll go in the future, because it's a time of change right now as well. There's been changes, there's been new associations formed, there's been new lifts brought in again. It's hard, and I think if we're always looking, because of all that turmoil at the top, if we're always looking to the international or organisations to guide us, we're maybe right now looking at the wrong place, because we don't know where things are going to sit. So I really feel it's like you're talking about the base of the pyramid. If we build things at home the way we want them to be, like our grassroots, like our own competitions, like the way we are training our coach, and focus on the people that are immediately around us, the people we train, then you know, maybe it's not going to have so much of a, like, you know, a jumping around. Like, you don't want to be changing your goals every 5 minutes. If we build things the way we want them here, like, we can compete in our own competitions and do what we want to do, and build our goals that way, and then take from that what we can and take it to international. Yeah, we definitely need more youths in sport. The grassroots movement's great. I think there's a really high percentage of veterans in this sport, which is great. There's a high percentage of female veterans as well, which is amazing. There's not many sports that can boast the number of older women we have. But we also need to build a little bit from the bottom as well. So we need to get younger people in. It's a hard sell.
It is. With something we're pushing on massively at Tune Over, and we're doing a lot of the fundraising. And luckily, in the month of March, we're getting showcasing the sport to be around about 200 students, which is great. But yeah, I think for me, I completely agree. I think it goes back to how we approach the competition for ourselves. You just focus on what you can control. And actually, in my gym and in our home nations, we can kind of control these little things. So let's just focus on them. The future of the sport, there's so many different inputs and so many different things. I think for me, are we ever going to get that consistency? Probably not. Any sport, I'm involved with athletics, and it's...
No, maybe not, but we can at least try,
Exactly.
Same, any sports, But as you say, if we try and provide the consistency, at least to the people that we coach and the people we deal with, then at least that gives a nice solid base for people. It means they're not having the carpet pulled up from under their feet every day.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit like sometimes when you're training a lift and then the lift's no longer there, or
Defo. Well, like I said, no, it's a complex subject that it probably deserves a round table. We should maybe try and get some of. We'll get you on a round table with a few other guys. It'll make for a really good one. But last question, Abby. Because obviously I'm conscious of time. But one thing I always ask people is, what would be your kind of like top 5 tips for people either lifting now or just getting into the sport and stuff like that? Do you know what would be your 5 tips?
Okay. Top 5 tips. Okay.
Put you on the spot, Abby. Put you on the spot.
I know. Well, I'm a big believer in technique. I'm a big believer in trying to understand why you're doing what you're doing, and to not just copying someone's movement pattern. Trying to think about what they're achieving by that movement pattern. So rather than thinking, I need to have my arm here or my leg here, think more about the weight that you're trying to move and how you're trying to move it. On that note, if you're new to the sport, getting a coach can help you with that, obviously. Going to class, trying to find a group of people to train together that can help you. Watching videos, analysing videos, reading, all this sort of stuff, looking into it. Okay, so that's probably 2.
I've got 2 there, Abby, don't
worry. So also remembering that your good training sessions, there has to be a balance of bad training sessions, not letting yourself be discouraged by that bad rep or that bad training session. Everything's a process. And not even just a one-off session. Sometimes you can go through stages where you feel like for months something just doesn't click. But it's all part of the process, and it's usually part of the learning process. And the best way to learn is to fail, basically. So don't be afraid of failing. Take the good with the bad. Don't be afraid of failing. You're going to come out of it stronger and better for it. And one training session does not a training cycle make. It doesn't mean that you've wrecked your whole training cycle if one session doesn't go well. It's hard because we all get very emotional about, like, we're invested in this sport, we get emotional about it, we want to do well, so it's hard to not react emotionally when something doesn't go well.
Cool.
And really, I would say as well, really work on that sort of, on that line, the self-regulation we were talking about. So use the data, start looking at your heart rate while you're training, start learning what it means and what it feels like to be at that heart rate, and use it, and what it feels like for a good rep, what it feels like for a bad rep, and how you can use that in your training process. Is that 5?
Yeah, we'll call it 5. We don't call it 5. No, that's absolutely awesome, and I think it's I know I cut you off guard there, so apologies. That's my fault on that one. But
Oh,
no,
that's okay. That's okay.
Abi, it's been absolutely fantastic, and like I say, I know a lot of the listeners will definitely get a lot out of this. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and thanks for coming on. And I've written down a whole host of notes there anyway, so it's helped me more than. I mean, even if the guys on the podcast don't benefit from it, I know I've got loads from it. So cheers for that anyway, But honestly, Abi, that was absolutely amazing, and hopefully we get to do it again soon.
Cheers. Thank you, Steve.
No worries.